Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is, quite frankly, going to stick with you. We're breaking down a truly terrifying first-hand account, sourced from a guy who bought what he thought was a peaceful Kansas farmhouse, only to uncover a world-ending secret. And let me tell you, the visuals this account paints are just so incredibly scary and dangerous. It's not just a spooky story, it's a visceral, escalating nightmare. So let's jump right in and unpack exactly what went down.
Our source for this account is a wealthy businessman from Texas. He's looking for a quiet family getaway, right? So he buys this highly fortified, secluded farmhouse in rural Kansas at a massive discount. It's sitting right in the middle of these vast, dense crop fields. But here's the catch. The seller, who happens to be his wealthy neighbor, gives him one absolutely chilling rule. Take a look at this quote. "Do not cross the barbed wire and never leave the house after 8 p.m." I mean, talk about a major red flag. It sounds like your classic horror movie setup, but as we'll see, the physical, terrifying reality of what was hiding in those crops goes far beyond a simple ghost story.
Now, you really have to look at the sheer paranoia built into the architecture here. On one side, you've got serious military-grade security. We're talking thick metal doors, automated iron shutters, and tall, heavy-duty barbed wire ringing the whole perimeter. But on the flip side, the neighbor is playing it cool, claiming, oh, that's just to keep out local thieves and wild animals. Come on, right? That discrepancy sets off immediate alarm bells. You literally do not build a concrete bunker to stop a teenager from stealing some corn. Standing all alone in that ocean of crops, the fortress-like design makes the impending danger feel incredibly isolating.
So let's look at how fast things went south. It is a rapid descent into a total nightmare. Night 1, heavy rustling and flattened paths in the crops. Creepy, sure, but maybe it's just a deer. But by night 3, the danger gets shockingly visible. Our guy and his young son are watching from the fence line, and they see a wild pig get absolutely torn apart by bare hands. The attackers aren't using weapons, just long nails and raw, savage strength. It's brutal. And by night 4, this unexplainable, hyper-violent threat arrives right at his fence line. The stage is totally set for a direct encounter.
Which brings us to the most agonizing question. Who or what is hiding in those fields? Imagine hearing flesh being torn apart in the pitch black. When the protagonist finally gets the courage to shine a heavy flashlight directly into the crops, he doesn't see wild animals scurrying away from the beam. No, whatever is stalking his property just stops dead in its tracks and stares right back at him. Just think about that visual for a second. Total darkness, broken only by a single beam of light revealing something staring back at you. It is literal nightmare fuel.
And the things he saw, they completely defied all human logic. Take a look at these details. They had glowing, cat-like eyes with vertical slits. When he shouted warnings at them, nothing. Completely unresponsive. And here's where it gets really dangerous. He fires a shotgun blast at close range, right? Hits one dead on. The creature barely even registers the pain. It just lets out this bizarre, inhuman shriek and limps off. Oh, and the most grotesque part? Its skin looked like it was rotting, shiny, and just slick with this thick sweat. Such a terrifying image.
While things get even more sinister the very next morning, the neighbor casually mentions that a wounded petty thief was found and taken to the hospital. But our protagonist knows the horrific truth. He knows he just shot a bulletproof monster that screamed like an alien and didn't bleed a single drop. When you look at this comparison, it becomes incredibly obvious that the wealthy neighbor is actively covering up a highly dangerous reality. He's basically using our protagonist as bait, all while hiding this monstrous truth literally right outside his window.
Okay, so here is the major turning point. Driven by pure fear, exhaustion, and this desperate primal need to protect his family from these nightly stalkers, the protagonist makes the single most dangerous mistake of his life. He says, "I had to know where they came from. I cut the barbed wire." By breaking the neighbor's one absolute golden rule, he physically creates an opening into the fields. He doesn't know it yet, but he basically just opened Pandora's box.
Armed with a shotgun, he decides to follow the limping, wounded creature right into those dense, towering crops. And man, the visual of this graveyard chase is so unbelievably tense and scary. Tracking a bleeding monster through a claustrophobic, pitch-black maze of corn, no thank you. Eventually, the trail leads him out of the crops and straight into an abandoned graveyard. But it's not a normal cemetery. The protagonist finds these horrific, massive piles of fresh animal and human bones just scattered all over the tombstones. It wasn't a graveyard. It was a feeding ground.
So he confronts this collapsed creature right there among the bones, and the horrifying reality sinks in. This thing is absolutely not human. He's demanding answers, but the entity is just making these unintelligible, terrifying gurgling sounds. Its tongue is literally black and rotting inside its mouth. When he looks closer at its chest, the skin is peeling and decaying. And remember that massive shotgun wound to the leg? There is zero blood. A complete unnatural absence of blood. The danger he's dealing with is completely unearthly.
Then, the monster lunges to bite his ankle. In a moment of just pure, visceral panic, our guy aims his shotgun and fires point-blank directly at its head. The impact completely obliterates the creature's skull. You think that's the end of it, right? Wrong. In what has to be one of the most terrifying, heart-stopping visuals of this entire ordeal, the decapitated body doesn't stop. It just keeps dragging itself across the dirt. Its hands are clawing forward, still actively trying to attack him without a head. No way.
He's scrambling backward from this crawling torso, trips, and looks down just in time to see a rotting hand violently burst up through the soil and grab his ankle. The actual ground beneath his feet is splitting open. All around him, dozens of rotting, reanimated corpses are clawing their way out of the dirt. They weren't just hiding in the fields this whole time. They were buried underneath them. Let that sink in for a second.
And the sheer scale of the danger here? It's staggering. We are talking hundreds of these unkillable, undead entities swarming out of the earth, filling the fields. It's a literal sea of rotting bodies. They're totally unfazed by bullets, just silently marching through the crops. It's an absolutely apocalyptic visual. He has no choice but to flee blindly, just blasting his last few shells into the horde, sprinting for his life back to that fortified farmhouse before he gets completely swallowed up.
Somehow, he barely makes it inside, but now the house is completely surrounded. Hundreds of these things are violently tearing at the metal walls, so the family has to execute a desperate last resort. Step 1, barricade every metal door. Step 2, pick up the only working communication line, which is a closed-loop landline to the neighbor. Once the neighbor grasps the terrifying scale of the breach, he gives them Step 3, a hidden underground basement tunnel connecting their two properties. At this point, it's literally their only chance at survival.
They rush down into the basement and find the secret tunnel. But guys, this is no safe haven. This claustrophobic sprint through a dark, narrow, dimly lit pipe becomes a terrifying race against death. The horror escalates to this suffocating level because the creatures above them start digging frantically downward. Picture this. Rotting hands and faces are literally breaking through the dirt ceiling and floor of the tunnel, swiping at the family's ankles as they run blindly through the dark. It is just so intensely scary.
By some miracle, they dodge those grasping hands and finally reach the heavy door at the far end of the tunnel. They burst through, totally expecting to find the safety of the neighbor's heavily fortified mansion. But what was actually waiting at the end of the tunnel? They stumble into another massive basement, but what they see inside is the most terrifying revelation of this entire agonizing ordeal.
They didn't walk into a basement. They walked into a laboratory. It turns out the neighbor's home was just a front for a horrific, secret holding facility. The protagonist describes this massive underground space packed with giant illuminated glass water tanks. And inside these tanks, hundreds of rotting corpses just suspended in liquid. Some of them are even twitching. Yeah, the wealthy neighbor wasn't a farmer at all. He was basically a warden for the undead.
They find the frantic neighbor upstairs, and the truth finally spills out. It's the military's dark secret. These things were part of a 10-year-old failed government project to create unkillable, regenerating soldiers. They feel zero pain, they don't need food, and if you blow off a limb, they just keep coming. Their behavioral loop is what makes them so profoundly dangerous. They instinctively bury themselves deep underground when the sun is up, and they instantly wake up to hunt the second they smell fresh blood. It was an uncontrollable, weaponized plague.
And then, the crushing realization hits our protagonist. The neighbor just looks at him, totally defeated, in absolute despair, and says, "You cut the wire. Now they will spread." You see, that barbed wire wasn't there to keep thieves out. It was literally the only thing keeping those infected soldiers boxed inside their designated feeding zone. By snipping that wire with a pair of pliers, the protagonist unknowingly created an open door for a relentless, regenerating military horde. He accidentally doomed the entire surrounding region.
The family somehow manages to hide out until daylight forces the creatures back underground, which finally gives them a window to flee back to Texas. But look at the chilling aftermath on this timeline. Day 1, the family escapes. Just 24 hours later, news reports say the neighbor was found dead inside his fortress. 1 month later, there are strange reports of robbers violently attacking neighboring villages at night. And 1 year later, hospitals are overflowing as this unknown, unstoppable plague goes global. The infection officially broke containment. As the narrator of our source material reflects from the supposed safety of Texas, he realizes the most terrifying fact of all. This infection travels underground. They bury themselves by day, spreading further and further beneath our feet, and they only rise at night to hunt. Which leaves us to ponder the immense, scary danger we've unpacked today. It brings us to one final, deeply unsettling question. When the earth splits open in your town, where are you going to hide? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Stay safe and keep learning.